Welcome to Tell the Damn Story, the show that explores the many ways to navigate the successes and failures that aspiring and struggling writers face to make your journey that much easier.
Hey, Alex Simmons, what's up? It's Tell the Damn Story.
Is that what it is? Oh my goodness, he's right.
Alex Simmons. This is Damon Manx. We got so much to talk about. First, I got to check in on Alex. If you give me a second, Damon. Alex, how are you?
Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm good. I'm fine.
All right, just checking on that. That's
and how
good.
are you,
That's
sir?
Good. I'm doing fantastic. The fall is here, and I'm really excited, Alex, because September 3rd showed the debut of part 3 of what we're going to talk about today. And October 1st is part 4 of what we're going to talk about. It has been a really fun reading summer for me. And the guy right here is the reason for it. Damon Manx and his The Ojanox series has
been
been,
for you to say.
Oh my God, it's been such fun. It is what you'd call maybe classic horror. It calls back the feel of 1970s, 1980s, that time when horror was really booming. I don't want to name names, SK, but it was a lot of that kind of feel. And it's just book after book has just kept me just pushing other books aside and saying, yeah, I want to know more about these characters. So we're going to talk about that stuff. You want to jump in, Alex?
I want to just say quickly, yeah, we're going to talk about stuff because this gentleman here, by the way, it's the interview of the three bearded men, right? So here we goatee guys, right?
It's the Smith Brothers episode of Tell the Damn Story.
Damien here is, or Damon actually here is the source of this material that you're so enthusiastically expounding about. And not only is he the writer, but he's wore several other hats along the way. And we're going to get to talk about much of that. But a lot of it is going to start out with the key core platformer foundation, which was his passion and drive to get this done. And we're going to talk really about how do you do that against all odds. So that's really where we're going to dig in today.
And what if people stay and stay around? What can we promise?
I'll be baking banana bread. No, that was Rebecca.
There you go. That's Rebecca.
Now, if you stay around, Damon, who's also mastered this quite well, will share his master plan for launching and promoting your books. And in this case, his 4 books, which are coming up, boom, boom.
There's a story to all that.
How to build that, set that framework up, and make it go. Stick around for the end, because that's when Damon's going to share those pearls of wisdom. But in the meantime, we're going to start with Chris is going to, because Chris is such a fanboy. Chris is going to lay out
sometimes,
and we're going to dig into it.
One of the things we're going to do is we're going to tell you, hey, the Damon Manx story is an amazing story. And if you want to hear every bit of it, we're going to refer you to Tell the Damn Story, episode 298, where I was lucky enough to interview Damon for the first time. And a great partner viewing with that is it's a show called Rise Above with Kevin Lanning. And the episode was Addicted and Armed, and it was an hour and a half of Damon recounting the past that actually led up to this opus. Very quickly, because Damon, those 2 episodes, you really did a lot of great explanation, and what an inspiring story. But I'm equally inspired by what happened at the end of the story. So I'm going to give 1 or 2 sentences, correct me if I'm wrong, and then we're going to move on.
Okay, so, just before you do that, repeat what those 2 sources are again.
Sure. Our own show, Tell the Damn Story, episode number 298, featuring Damon Manx, and Rise Above with Kevin Lanning, Addicted and Armed, it's called, and it's with Damon Manx. We'll have links for that in the show notes, right? Say yes, Alex.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
there you go. All right, cool. Now, Damon, you had a past where playing in bands and being of the era that we're from, there was some extracurricular and some pain medication that took control and led to a darker time in your life. and led to jail time, which is so gracefully and generously recounted for us in Tell the Damn Story episode 298 and in Rise Above with Kevin Lanning. And I really encourage viewers to watch both of those, because they'll be a fan of you as much as I am, because rising from that darkness is always inspiring and impressive. And thank you for sharing that story every time that you do.
For being so
But what I
authentic
would,
and genuine about it, and
yeah,
vulnerable or transparent. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely impressive. And God bless you. I'm glad you're on the other side of that. And congratulations for your
Thank you.
continued sobriety. I have a lot of friends going through that, and it's every year they have an anniversary. Again, it just renews the pride. So fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're welcome, sir. But at the end of this, there you were, having given your time or served your time, did your bit, and you're in a halfway house in Newark, New Jersey. How many guys are in that halfway house?
There's 277 guys.
All right, 277 guys, and COVID hits.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody locked inside.
Yep.
And
Madness.
Again.
Can you expand on that madness?
Yeah. So I'm in a halfway house in Newark, New Jersey, serving out the last year, almost year of my sentence, and COVID hits. I had just been released to go to college and finish up my associate's degree, which was the pinnacle of what I was expecting to really accomplish. Of course, my sobriety was the main focus while I was locked up, but getting that associate's degree was something I was really looking forward to doing. And so I set out to do it, and right away, COVID hits, and they closed down the school, they closed down the halfway house, and they lock it up, and nobody knows how to deal with it. But it's already in the building.
COVID is already in the building.
COVID's already in the building, and guys are like dropping. Wow. It's like the stand. Like people are standing in the hallway dropping, and they're just like, guys are coming in and taking them out and bringing them to the prison medical facility every day. And it's spreading fast. And we're all catching it to some degree, but the halfway house doesn't know how to deal with it. So they're like, you can't have hand sanitizer because you guys are going to drink it because it's alcohol. And you guys can't wear masks because you're convicted felons, because that'll be disguising your identity. So we won't be able to tell who's who. But you guys got to stand 6 feet apart on the food line, but you'll all be locked in your rooms with 12 guys in a 12 by 12 room.
Just crazy.
In communal bathrooms. And yeah, so as it develops, prison guards in Tyvek suits start arriving every day and removing guys from the facility. And it's getting heated because we're watching the television and 100,000 people die today. It's getting really heated. It's getting really scary. Thoughts of, I've got to get the hell out of here, or I'm going to die here.
Now
start presenting themselves. So it was a pressure cooker situation.
And when you first got there, how many guys?
277.
And when you left?
Less than 100.
Jeez, how about that?
Yeah.
That's nuts. Now, you at that time could not leave. You weren't free to say, all right, I'm out of here. And like you said, 12 to a room. You didn't have a lot of space. A matter of fact, you only had this one unique little keyboard tech and your headphones, right? You'd put on your tunes, listen, and what was this little gadget?
It's called the Alpha Smart 3000.
I owned one of those.
Did you? Okay, so it's about that big. It's a little portable word processor, runs on batteries, and you can type on it. You can only see 3 lines of text at a time, and there's 8 files that you can fill up. But this thing became my constant companion, and the guys in my room, they were going as nuts as me. They were dealing with it by playing poker and playing loud music and screaming and hollering at each other. But at 6 o'clock every night, I would put on my headphones, crank up the radio, and just sit there and type. And I didn't know what was going to come out, but the first words that came out, I actually liked. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to write a short story about Halloween. And I wrote there is a presence that only now I forgot the line of my damn story. There is a presence delivered on the breeze that only shows itself on Halloween, which became chapter 1 and still has stayed intact. But I wrote that line and I'm like, ooh, this gives me something wicked this way comes vibes. And I'm
Oh,
like,
that's my heart. That's my
yeah,
heart.
that's the story that inspired me as a child
Oh,
and started this love for Halloween.
I'm sorry.
Alex has to share something with you.
No, I
Damon.
don't. I
Please
don't have
do.
to share anymore. I'm 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That's the story that lit the light in my head
Mm,
and said, I want to be a writer. I want to write like this.
that's the one.
That was it. The seller of lightning rods. That was it. It turned me completely from I want to be an actor to I want to be a writer. That was
Right.
it. So go ahead.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you thought you were writing a short story on Halloween,
Yeah.
and
I had never written
you
a
didn't
novel before.
you
Yeah.
didn't really stop at a short story, did you?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm getting busy. You set it up so nicely, and I feel like we just hopped over a spot, just one little small spot.
Yeah.
Guys are being carried out. It's becoming a pressure cooker. Mindsets, I'm sure, are freaking because outside those walls, people were
We were
freaking out. Your bunkmates, cellmates, whatever, were doing whatever it was they could do and whatever state of mind they were in. Where did your head go that sent you towards this device and maybe just writing something? What turned that corner for you?
The first thing that I started doing is, so here's what's going through my mind is, oh, we've got to break out of this place.
Okay.
We've got to get out of here. I don't care if I've got to be on the run the rest of my entire life, which I would have to be, which I would get caught, which I'd spend even more time in. The options were not really good, but that thought was there. I've got to get out of here, or I've got to do something to stop myself from going crazy. And I began to like document every wrong move that the facility was making during this time in hopes of, hey, one day I'm gonna write the tell all on the New Jersey prison system of how you guys bombed this and killed so many of my friends. And I realized that was a little malicious. And I said, let me turn to fiction, which has always been my muse. I've always been enamored by Halloween. I've always been in love with the mystery, felt as a small boy, smelt felt as a child. The first time I experienced like my first ghost story, the first haunted house I went to, the first time I read Something Wicked This Way Comes, and has stayed with me. It's created the love for horror, created the love to want to be an author. And I started writing and I'm like, hey, let me write a short story because that's all I had written short stories. I'd written novella size short stories. And I started writing. And in the beginning of the Oceanox, Troy Fisher's mother, they're throwing a Halloween party and she's telling a story that she wrote as an English major in college about a mysterious creature called the Oceanox that only shows itself in the autumn or every Halloween. It just blows into town mysteriously on the breeze. And I wrote this 5-page thing that needed to be edited to 2 paragraphs. I was just writing. I was just telling the damn story. I got out of my way and I just let it come out and it was word vomit. And it's going and it's going and it's going. And I'm only seeing 3 lines at a time. So maybe I'm writing the same line 20 times. But, in between those 20, there's 3 gems in there, like 3 gems. So I start writing it and I write that scene and I'm like, that was pretty good. Let's see where it goes. And then I didn't have an idea where it was going to go. I didn't have any major thought, but as I started growing, okay, and then I went to, okay, hey, a murder has to take place. And I explored the murder and the guy who actually gets murdered, he talks about a couple other people in the town. And I'm like, let's take the bird's eye view to these people in the town. And then let's discover the body. And then it started growing. And then I'm like, wait a second, this isn't a short story. And then what I would do is I went the next day and I said, what 12 things would I like to see happen next? What 12 perfect scenes would actually logically happen in a
Right.
town like this with this going on. And I wrote down like 15 of them, and I went through it and I picked and chose. Oh, go ahead. You've got to.
So just you started writing every night at 6 o'clock until
Yeah.
what, 11?
Yeah, 6 to 11. Lights went out at 11. So whether
Right.
they would go out and I'd be like, oh, you're kidding me. Yeah. So I would start writing. My writing process would start after dinner at 6. I would sit down, my feet up on the bed, my sitting in a chair, headphones on, cranked full blast. Sometimes it'd be rock, sometimes it'd be R&B, sometimes it'd be country, just whatever to drown out the insanity going on. And then my fingers, I don't even know where it was coming from. It was just coming out.
So you would write, and then that would fill up. I think you could have 8 files per
Files, yeah.
on the, what is the name of this machine again?
The Alpha Smart 3000.
The Alpha Smart 3000. And then the next day, you would have to transfer that to a computer, so you'd have
Yeah.
the 8 files again, right?
Yeah. There
What did
was
you
one
do-
computer in the halfway house that I
So-
could use for an hour a day.
So what did you have to do during the day before 6 o'clock?
Prior to, I was going to college. Now,
Right, but now you were taking classes on Zoom.
well, actually, prior to that, I was leaving the halfway house, going to the college. So now Zoom hadn't been figured out yet
Added
for,
yet, yeah.
us. So they were sending us like a slew of homework to do.
So that's
from
what
the
you would be
college.
doing.
So I'd
And you'd be
doing that.
thinking during that, what are the 12 things? And sometimes you'd write 15 things you want to see next. So
Yeah.
that was an outlining just as far as the headlights would go, right? Just a little bit ahead of
Yeah, yeah. It started with, okay, I wrote these scenes. The next day I would say, what are the next ones? And I'd plot them out. I'd be like, oh, okay. And as more characters started getting added, like I started falling in love with these characters. And I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, one of my favorite books ever is The Stand. And I
Sure.
love the way we take the bird's eye view from Larry to Stu to Fran
Yeah.
to the trash can man to
Sorry.
back to Stu. And I'm like, that really gives you many brushstrokes from different points of view. And
I
it
felt
allows
that
us
way.
to look back.
I felt that way about SK's Salem's Lot. I
Yeah.
felt by the time the horror was really starting to hit and spread, you knew so many of these characters that there was no, oh, that's just a side character. It was, no, not her. No, not him. Ah, geez. You were wrapped up in it because you had a sense of the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you mentioned the Salem's Lot, because that is, well, among everything else that SK does in that, I'm really hilarious that we can't say the name, but
We're not allowed to say the name.
oh, of course we can, but for
Oh,
some
okay.
reason
We
I started
prefer not to.
SK, Stephen King, right?
The author that shall remain
That's right.
nameless.
It's never smiled upon when you say it's what comes to mind with your particular project here. But whatever else Salem's Lot was, it was a great exploration of life in a small town. The Stand was more national. It was wide open, and you combined both those things, because this is a huge problem facing your town, Garrett Grove. But it's also ingeniously contained for 3 books so far. I haven't read the 4th book, so I don't know. But in that small town, so you get this micro exploration of all the nuances of town life. And I want to talk about that later on. But also, it's this huge problem. I think that lends to this engagement on a level like The Stand, but an intimacy like Salem's Lot, because you're always in that same town. So I'd have a million questions on that, but I
But
want
we're
to
only going to
go
get to 500,000. So don't
right,
worry.
but I want to get back to process, and then I promise we'll talk about some of those other questions I have about Garrett Grove and some of your choices there. But you wrote every night for 5 hours.
Yeah.
And you continued to go and continued to go, and the story kept growing. And then in the day, you'd get more ideas, and the story kept growing. What was the final gross word count overall of the first draft?
520,000.
520,000 words.
And the average novel is what? 80, 85?
Yeah,
85 to
80,
110 or something like that. Yeah. So 520,000 words, something like that.
At 3 lines per.
Three. Yes, I want to spend some time.
They weren't all good
think
words.
about it, ladies and gentlemen. It's okay, because I profess a lot on Tell a Damn Story. Let it suck. Get the first draft out. Just get it out, and then you mentioned in the foreword in the Orthodox, it was 520,000 words or something like that. How many words did you cut out? Did you edit out?
Yeah, roughly I think overall we have about 360,000 left between the 4 novels. So
almost 200,000 knocked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Check that. The willingness to go through that is inspiring.
There's characters you'll never even meet because they've been taken out of the book.
Wow. And we lost entire characters.
Yeah.
Garrett Grove got smaller and we never knew. So let's, if you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit more about going through that draft and then some editing, and then we'll get back to those other things. All right. So what sustains you to keep going and keep letting the story expand? Was the story as interesting to you, or was it, I'm just killing time here? Combination? What was your thinking as this was growing considerably?
As I was writing, I don't know if other maybe every author feels this way about every book they ever wrote. As I was writing this, I was overcome with a sense that this was the story. This was my opus, my story of my life, the one that I'd always wanted to write. And it was coming together as, I was excited. I was connecting with the characters. I was getting the chills at certain scenes. So it's just a work of passion, just such a work of passion. And still to this day, I'm every bit in love with this book as I was when I first created the first scene. And that is the key to being able to pursue through the hardest part of your writing process, editing process, is being passionate about what you are doing.
That's my next question. To do what? To write?
Yeah. How long were you writing? 5 hours a day?
I wrote the first draft in 6 months on October 31st, 2020, which is also my sobriety anniversary.
Oh, wow.
I wrote the end for the first time, and 6 days later, 5 days later, I was released from the halfway house.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
So it got you through.
It got me through. It did. But I had a sounding board there. One of the characters in the book, a guy named Nick Gomez, was actually one of my friends there who was my sounding board. And I would give him, every time I'd write 5 scenes, I'd give them to him that night. He'd read them. He'd come back. He'd be like, hey, how about this? How about that? He's like, you know what you're missing? You're missing facial expressions. And so I had a lot of help along the way. Yeah, a lot of help along the way.
So Nick Gomez is one of your first editors in that feedback kind of way.
Yeah, yeah.
Beta readers.
Yeah, beta reader. Very good. And how important was his feedback to driving the story forward and to helping you shape that?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't have done it. To give me he helped build the excitement of having somebody else right there who was that passionate about horror and liking what I was doing, and also that into the idea of the story, and actually to offer, hey, what about this? And I'm like, I'm going to make you a character in the book. He's yes. And then I'm going to kill you.
Gee, thanks.
Let me ask a risky question. Are you still in touch with him now?
Yeah, we do, but it's not like we talk a lot. We'll
Of course.
messenger each other
Does
a little bit.
does he know that these are coming out?
Yeah, he's pretty
How's he feel
excited
about
about
that?
it. Yeah, oh, he's psyched.
That's
He
cool.
he wants his free book.
Ah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He earned it. He
yeah,
All
earned
right,
it.
so
yeah, absolutely.
it didn't, the editing didn't, that was feedback, but
Yeah,
now you're out, you're taking care of the rest of your life. How do you go about getting an editor, or do you start editing it yourself?
I knew this project needed to be rewritten,
Right.
but the first thing it
They all
needed to
do.
do, it needed to marinate. So
Mhm.
I put it in the drawer for 6 months and I didn't look at it
Okay,
for
great
full six
advice.
months.
Great
Yeah.
advice.
I put it away. I let it sit. I
Did you think about it while it was sitting there?
I've always been it's never left me, and I had still not been published yet. I had
Right.
never even had a story accepted. So I needed to do all that. So I was doing my short stories and I was working on my other stuff and trying to get a name. The Damon Manx brand had yet to be established. So I had to
Oh,
work on all that. And yeah, I got published. I got a really crappy publishing deal from an indie horror publisher that raked me over the coals and took advantage of me. And I got that under my belt now. So,
yeah.
we all
We all
need that.
have to have that one.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
all
yeah.
need that. Yeah. And then I put out poorly edited books and I put out some better edited books. And then I got on to Back to the Oceanauts about 6 months later. And for a couple years, I just kept going through this whole thing, trying to weed it down to a more concise version of what it was, because there was a lot of repetitiveness. There was a
Right.
lot of very
But
declarative sentences.
were you okay with that process, or did it wear you down? Because
Oh,
that's just what we have to do. That's
it's
like
part
having to
of
take
it.
a shower.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
I don't
You know
know.
what?
I don't know.
I don't know. As I'm going, I'm working with other authors. I'm reading other authors, and I'm learning more. And I'm reading still, and I'm like, oh, that's a much better way. Because the thing about Something Wicked This Way comes, and I read like a very first rough draft of that, and then I got an edition where Bradbury goes through his edits, and he wanted every sentence to be a perfect sentence so that the sentence flows into the next sentence, creating a paragraph that is so precise and just flows. Because when you put this out, you want people to be able to go through it smoothly in their head and it to flow so eloquently. And that's really what I was trying to get at. And I kept working at it. I wanted those sentences to work together. I wanted the paragraphs to be concise. I didn't want filler. And I wanted each chapter to end much like the first three books. Every scene I wanted to. And then Troy took the knife in his hand and he
Cliffhanger.
cliffhanger. If I could end each scene on a cliffhanger, it's going to make him turn the page. So that was what I was trying to do. Make the scenes cliffhangers, make the chapters cliffhangers, so we could keep bouncing back. And like, you're always like, well, what's going on with the sheriff? Get back to the sheriff. I'm sorry. What was the question?
No,
In
you're doing
1847,
fine.
yeah, right.
So what we were getting out of that answer was that you used what you learned from other authors, from reading, right? Every great author will tell you, if you want to write, read all the time and read everything. And reading Bradbury's story, but also Bradbury's notes and his early drafts, you get to see process applied. So yes, that was the answers. But how much were you able to edit out on your own before you said, I need a professional editor as well?
I want to say I've worked for about 2 years or so trying to get it to a slimmed down version
Right.
that I was happy to start offering to beta readers or to an editor. And
Okay.
time gets a little fuzzy here because when you're working on a project for
Sure.
over 4 years,
Sure.
at one point, and I want to say close to about 2 years ago, I was introduced to an editor, Ben Eads from Crystal Lake
Mhm.
Publishing, who took it and gave me a developmental edit and just
Okay.
pointed out, said, look, all right, here's your showing. You're telling, you're not showing. Here you need to build rising tension. Here I want you to introduce the character. Tell me 2 things about that character. 2 distinguishable things that'll just sit in our mind without going over the top. All right, here, we don't need to know that. Like, and just like red and yellow inked the whole thing and said, this is what you need to work on. And I took that with book 1 and I'm like, oh no, it was a lot. But this guy was like Yoda to me. He taught me so much from just that developmental edit.
Sure.
So from there, I went and I worked through all the books, taking the advice and the suggestions that he used to help. Because at times where you don't want to, the jump scare isn't going to work in a book. You got to build rising tension. You've got to, you've got to, you've got to play with the reader's emotion. You got to build suspense, and you got to deliver when it comes. So,
Yeah.
and I think I accomplished that.
Yeah.
And so that was the first edit, and that took about a year for me to
Now, was that
get all
just
those.
Scream in the Dark, or was it the whole book?
He went and just edited Scream in the Dark. He didn't even edit. He's just said, this is what you need to do. This is what, this doesn't work. And then I took what he showed me and applied it to the entire 4 books.
Right. Now, just for the audience, the Ojanox is one long story, the Ojanox, but it's broken into 4 books. Scream in the Dark is book 1. Ashes to Ashes is book 2. All Fall Down is book 3. And The Lonesome Mountain is book 4. Right? The first 3 are out now. Lonesome Mountain comes out October 1st. So if you're interested, if you hear all this and you want to see what it's like, you can get most of it already on the Zon, as you say, on Amazon.
At Barnes and Noble as well.
And so, yeah.
And all 2 of them are out already in audiobook, and any day now, book 3 will be out in audio.
Who's reading?
I found a diamond in the rough. Guy is JP Adams. He has the perfect Oceanox voice. Oh my goodness. I implore you to go to the TTDSOnAir Audible and listen to the free samples that they allow you to. Such gravitas in his voice. And
what was his name again?
JP Adams, or Jonathan Adams. And he looks a little bit like me, actually. Yeah. Great. Fantastic. I can't recommend him highly enough. Working with him has been a pleasure every step of the way.
That's fantastic. Now, this developmental editor, and we might as well say his name again one more time to give him credit.
Ben Eads. He's written such books as Cracked Sky, which is a really good one. And you can find, he's an editor, works with Crystal Lake Publishing.
Crystal Lake Publishing. Okay. You apply lessons learned from this Yoda. Yes. And you do it across all 4 books. I happen to notice in the credits on one of the books, I think it's All Fall Down. Now, that's the one I'm currently reading. There was another editor credited as well. So you went to other editors as the books progressed, or what happened?
My content and line editor is Lisa Leetone, who was my confidant, my partner in this book. Once it was ready, I'm like, hey, I've got the books. Let's start doing them. Lisa Leetone, she took each book, she did the content and line editing, and we worked together on that. This Thick as Thieves,
yeah. And what'd you learn from that part of the process?
Lisa would call me when I was getting things wrong. Excuse me. Definitely where to cut the fat, where to trim the fat, where something wasn't, is that really necessary? Sometimes I'd have to give a little pushback, and I'll be like, trust me, you haven't read the book 3, this is going to have a significant part. Most of the time she's right. She also had her father was in the military, so there's a need for weapons knowledge in this book. So we had
Sure.
weapons knowledge coming in. She's from another part of the country, so she had to also, hey, you're talking about homes like this. People from Texas don't know that your houses are like this. You got to describe them a little bit. So you got to think geographically when you're writing a book. Like, I'm from a place where everybody's got a bi-level, but
Right.
in Texas, people are living in ranches. They don't know that every
Right.
time you walk in a house, you go up the stairs. So when you say every house has stairs, it seems a little odd. It seems like, oh, every house has stairs. They do where I live. But sometimes
Right.
you got to change it up. Maybe you got to throw in a ranch every now and then.
That split level that
Yeah.
is in our area.
Yeah.
I did want to talk this great segue opportunity. Garrett Grove, which is where the
So,
entire Ojanax
yeah.
takes place. You have rather than expanding out nationally, you expand inwards, being more detailed in as all aspects of a small town: police, fire, hospital, the morgue, homes, as you just mentioned, schools, local mining, and how all of these different things functioned separately and together. There was a lot of information that is told so well. The details never get in the way of the forward progress of the story. But one of the things, as when the author mind pops up instead of the reader mind, I'm like, how much research did he do into all this? So how did you learn how a hospital really works, how a mining community really works, how a school? I know where you got the 10-year-old stuff from. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. Even expanding on that. Truth be told, Garrett Grove, although it's set in the upper New York State area, is a mirror image of my hometown where I grew up. Lois Fisher, my mother Lois, worked in a hospital. My mother was a pathological secretary. So I grew up hearing all about pathology and phlebotomy and bloodborne pathogens. And this was dinner. This was talk over
The
dinner.
conversation.
Yeah. The father, Don, who's a bit of an absentee father, works for a company called Duquesne Industries that their quarry is mining, quarry process, and rock. And we have a quarry in town.
Okay.
My father didn't work for the quarry, but my father worked for a company called DuPont, and he was in charge of the explosives department at DuPont. So he would bring home fake blasting caps. And we'd also, while we were talking about bacteria, we also had fake blasting caps on the dinner. Hey, could you pass the meatloaf and move the blasting caps? So we had that. There was a lot. I still had to really research. Also, the Lenni Lenape tribe was prevalent in this area. Their arrowhead fever was at an all-time high when we were kids.
When you're growing up, yeah.
Yeah, and the mountain at the base of town. I used to play in the foothills. It's all there. It's even the town map. Like, I could draw the map of town and you could follow it, everybody's footsteps through Garrett Grove.
That's amazing. So much of this is not memoirish, but based on your actual experiences.
Yeah, you pulled from your life experiences and then embellished where necessary.
I read a story last night at a library reading about, in book 1, Troy Fisher is remembering his first day of school. It's a very tearful moment, and everybody was a little misty-eyed when I said it. Then when I told them, while this is a work of fiction, this is my memory of my first day of school, and I just put it in this book. So there's a lot more than just, it's fictionalized, but the book is not an homage to my childhood, but it's an homage to childhood, even though no child should ever read this book.
But those of us who do read it, it will speak to some degree to the child in us.
Yeah. Let's move to the levels of narrative, because you mentioned Troy and his friends see the story from like a 10-year-old perspective, and it's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
But Carl and Bert are adults, and Bert's even an older adult. And you get, without a stylistic change, you get the more mature view on things. And you do that exceptionally well. It grows from a very small cast, say in the first chapter or so, to as large a cast as a small town will have. There are a lot of named characters in here, and you do an exceptional job keeping them recognizable.
Mm.
How? People love to hear about how.
You know what? It all starts with me hearing their voice in my head, a distinct voice that each person has. And a lot of the people in this are inspired by people I've met.
Of course.
I've used characters and qualities of people. And it also goes back to what Ben told me in those first developmental edits. He goes, "Tell me two sentences about that character that are so unique, that really describe us, that get to know him." The first time we meet Bert, he gets out of the car carrying a medical bag, wearing a brown suit that's so wrinkled it looks like he slept in it. Also, his hair looks like he hasn't dragged a comb through it in over a week. We've got a clear picture of Bert.
A bird, yeah.
Right from the start. So I figured just by doing that in two sentences, two distinguishable characteristics of each character,
Mm-hmm.
and then we grow on them as
Yeah.
they grow. Think of him. Bert's a snarky dude. He's and his best friend, the sheriff, they've been friends for a long time, and they're jabbing at each other the whole time. And it's very playful banter, but at times they're quite fed up with each other.
So you mentioned that a lot of them are inspired from people, but you do not get that, or even a whiff of that, in the published narrative. Did you do something during production, during rewrites, to make everybody more organic, or how did that happen so it doesn't sound like I'm flipping through your family photo?
Yeah, no, a lot of the characters are an amalgamation of a
Mhm.
bunch of people all in one.
And then once you start hearing the voice, they
Right.
take on their own life.
Yeah, it was easy for me to step into the kids.
Yeah, why?
A, a, a lot of the scenes happened to me as a kid. I was sitting in that tire playground, just in my mind, remembering how these scenes would have played out when I was in fourth grade. And fourth grade was like such a magical time for me.
Including a first kiss.
Yeah, first kiss. I had been hit by a car the summer before it, and spent the summer into fall in the hospital. And the teacher of my fourth grade would bring my homework to the hospital every day. That was how I met her. And then I'm coming to class and being welcomed back, and right around Halloween time, and having my walk around on crutches, and having a Halloween party at my house. So it's always been there. And that's where's that memory that you go back to about that innocent time, that special moment. Yeah, it's Halloween, probably right around fourth grade.
Did you see the film Belfast?
I did not.
I would recommend it for some of the things that you're talking about now, in terms of the perspective of a young person dealing with the bigger, uglier world around him, and being totally lost in why. I don't understand. I'm just going to very quickly just say the opening sequence, spoiler alert, opening sequence, you're in Belfast, the city present, all colorful, everything, and then it does a crossfade or dissolve into black and white 1960s Belfast, in this little community, this little neighborhood. And we see this little boy playing with his other friends in the middle of the day. He's got a trash can lid for a shield and a sort of a play toy sword, and he's just having a grand time. He's just totally enjoying being possibly 8 years of age. And his mother steps out of their little ground floor apartment onto the street and calls for him. through the walls along the street to come get his tea. He has his time for his tea. And so the other neighbors carry the call. This young girl goes to get him. She's older than him. She gets, your mother's calling you for tea, right? And she takes him. So he's running through the streets and he's just totally still lost in that fantasy. And then he stops. He's on his block. He's just a few feet from his door and he stops. And the camera is locked on the frontal shot of his face. And you can tell whatever he's seeing has not only stunned him, but we can see that there's confusion and fear building. And the camera does a 360 around him, just staying focused on his reaction. We don't quite get what it is he's looking at until finally the camera stops from behind him and we see over his shoulder to in the distance, just down the block, this mob pouring from around the corner and coming down the block. And they've got Molotov cocktails and they're screaming and it's shouting and they're chanting violently and cursing. And then one of them throws a Molotov and it explodes. And it doesn't hit him, but it explodes near him. And now he's full of terror. And you can tell he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't understand. And then the story moves from there. I'll stop there.
Yeah.
The story moves from there. And in a lot of the film, even though we go with some of the adults and things like, a lot of the film is about how do you explain this to this child? How can this child even comprehend what's going on when suddenly his neighbors are on opposite sides and there's this violence and there's military and my family is upset and torn and divided and none of this makes sense. And it's a great way to help us as adults understand that there are times when things just don't make sense and we feel powerless to affect that. And I think from what Chris is telling me about your story, there's a sense of that as well.
I got to
eventually
check out that movie.
On every level.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I've got to check out Belfast.
It's Kenneth Branagh's directed the piece. He wrote and directed it, and portions of it are based on his experience at that
Other
time.
troubles, yeah.
You know, it's really considered a really well done film.
Oh, I agree. I agree 100%. I have one more production question, and then we can go to what we might as well call part 2, which is everything after the book was ready. This is an opus, your opus, right? This is a 4-book series telling one story. How did you keep the faith through multiple years of work and production and inching it forward to completion? If you had to say something about your experience that someone else might be able to use to keep going on their project, what would it be?
Well, inside me, there was no way this story was going to die with me. I was going to make sure of that. And I'm a determined person. I am very determined, and you've got to stick the landing. That's what it's always all about. Like, you can write and edit and do all that all day long, but it's all about sticking the landing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can answer this correctly. I was always so passionate about this. And even as I'm putting out novellas and I'm putting out short stories and I'm putting out whatever, I'm just telling people, like, for years, yeah, but wait till you read the Oceanox, because that's where it's at. And people are like, yeah, I've been hearing about this for years, whatever. But I'm like, no, really, this is the story. Like, I've written the ultimate Halloween coming of age creature feature. They're like, yeah. And I was just so driven. But you know what? You don't eat a pizza all at once.
Mm-hmm.
You take one slice at a time, and I read a book it's a metaphorical book about a girl who wanted to write a book cataloging birds. But it really wasn't a book about cataloging birds. It was a book about a girl who wanted to write a book. And she asked her dad, I'm like, how do I write this book about these birds? And he goes, bird for bird, one bird at a time.
Right.
So it's a one
Bird by
word
bird.
at a time. And it's not the sprint, it's the journey, and it's the long distance haul.
Mhm.
So don't bite off more than you can chew in one sitting. Set realistic goals along the way, accomplish those realistic goals. That's what I was doing. And seeing those actually coming to fruition, because there was so much more than just rewriting it, editing it. It's completely illustrated book. It's the audio. It's the I wanted these covers. Everything about this book was the exact way that I wanted it, and I wasn't going to settle on anything else. I wanted all the books to be uniform. I wanted the covers to have my exact image in mind, and I had an original artist do 2 books, and I spent the money on the covers, and I'm just like, this isn't what I'm looking for. And I just said, nah, and I
Took the loss and kept going.
and it's just, when you're that passionate about something, you owe it to yourself to see it to the end. And there was no way. SK wrote a big series called The Dark Tower.
Sure.
And at one point, as he was in it, he didn't write it all at once. He wrote them book by book.
Sure.
And when he got hit by the car, somebody sent him a letter and said, hey, I'm 80 years old and I don't think I'm going to make it to the end of this series. Can you tell me how it ends? And he's, oh, geez, I got to finish this series.
Right.
I didn't want my story to die with me. So this has been my focused goal. And since I put these books up for pre-order, I haven't written a word since.
Oh, no. We'll have to talk. We'll have to talk about getting you going on that.
I've done other things, but I've just, I needed a little vacation.
Deserved.
Yeah.
And that's a great time to say, okay, that's that part. And now we're going to go into, okay, the project is done to your satisfaction. And now it's all about ushering it into the world to the best you can. So this is going to be almost a separate conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say now that the 4 parts, whether the timing is exact, it's where you want it to be. The first decision was it's too big to put out as one book. How did you come about separating it into 4 different books? What was the pro and con there? What were the challenges?
Yeah, looking at the book, it was going to be, even if I put it in like an 11-point font, it was going to be 1,200 pages. And there's not really a platform that will allow you to publish a written work at 1,200 pages as an indie author. Right. Ingram Sparks, I think, limits it to about 1,000. I had illustrations that made it front matter, back matter. And nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to buy a $70 novel from Damon Manx because nobody knows who he is at this point.
Not yet. Yeah.
I
tell you what, it's
the guys on TikTok,
happen, buddy.
the people on TikTok knew who I was, but they want to hear other things. So I knew I hemmed and hawed. I'm like, even 3 books. Like if I break it into 3 books, these are 3 massive books.
Right. So
I looked for that distinct dropping point. Of course, it would have to be cliffhangers.
Yeah, sure.
Which I've gotten only one person who was bummed. One review saying,
one pissed.
Oh, yeah, one pissed. But if you buy a book that says 1 of 4,
yeah, it says it on the cover.
Shame on you. Yeah, shame on you.
Okay, you make that decision.
Yeah.
Where did the 4 subtitles come from? Because it's the Oceanox series, and then each one has its Scream in the Dark, Ashes to Ashes, All Fall Down, Lonesome Mountain. Where they come from?
Scream in the Dark was obviously going to be called that. It's the haunted house that Troy built. The haunted house that I built was called Scream in the Dark. It was always going to be Scream in the Dark. Oh, Scream in the Dark is a through line throughout the whole damn
Sure,
book.
sure.
It was going to be Scream in the Dark. Book 2, we're dealing with some bodies showing up and some bodies that are going to have to be disposed of. And Bert Lively, our coroner, works in the morgue, and old Smokey the Incinerator is
Yep.
a character in itself. So Ashes to Ashes became the title for book 2, and what naturally follows Ashes to Ashes is
All fall down. The
all
nursery
fall
crime.
down, all fall
Nursery.
down. We just happen to have more than a few people falling down in All Fall Down. And then Lonesome Mountain was probably the toughest one of the titles to come up with, but the Lynn tribe had called Garrett Mountain Endless Mountain, but it was loosely translated to Lonesome Mountain.
Okay.
And when you get to book
You'll
4,
see why.
that does explain itself.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the covers all have a very telltale detail of the creature feature, which is this round open mouth.
Try saying that 6 times fast. A telltale detail? Yeah.
Telltale detail.
It's a very round mouth with very many small, sharp teeth. They look like shark teeth. I know where that image comes from in the story, but why did that become a key visual part of your covers?
From the beginning, I was thinking branding on this. Now, the ocean, people, you ever hear people, oh, my book's named Stranger Things or whatever. I wanted a book that's never been named before, so I came up with the name Oceanox.
Okay.
And I even played around with the spelling. Originally, it was spelled OU, like a Ouija board, and that didn't work. And I found these letters that go together. I'm like, wow, I like the way they look. I just, that looks creepy. And I'll bet that nobody's ever had a creature named the Oceanox. Not only did I want a creature's name that's never been used before, I wanted a creature that really hasn't been done before.
Right.
So I came up with this Oceanox. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but it's also the O for Oceanox
of the word
is now the center of every book cover. And the one of the telltale features of the Oceanox, when it takes over a host, is the tiny teeth that develop in the host's mouth. That I wanted that. I knew the first book, I said I want it over the town or over the mountain with the moon shining, but I want the moon to look like a mouth. And we started with that. And then Christy Ulrich did the covers. Amazing cover artist. She did most of the illustrations as well. And I'm like, you know what? Let's go with a glowing orb around the moon. And once we did that, I'm like, oh, now we have an O. I'm like, now let's do that with every cover. Let's incorporate this O into every cover. And then we started, what would Ashes to Ashes look like? And what would All Fall Down look like? So we,
sounds cool. And
so it was part of the branding. So I wanted all of the branding to be similar. I wanted all the splines to be similar. Scene breaks, all were going to have that mouth throughout the book. So I wanted the Oceanox branding to be on point, and I wanted to own it all outright.
It has a secondary effect in that just subliminally seeing that mouth, that open mouth again and again throughout the book, it underscores the presence of this evil. Because even if you're flipping, you were somewhere in town and you flip to the next and the O is there, it's just a reminder of what's permeating this whole story. It works very well for branding. And there's a segue, and let's take advantage of it. You have been conscious about branding for as long as I've known you. The hat, the sunglasses, the similar image on all of your videos. You have a three-prong attack on social media. There's the look, and you're talking about something with writing, or talking about books or this. Then there's just the sunglasses and the musical question. And then there's the Damon Manx's Bump in the Night on Facebook, and now Citizens of Garrett Grove as secondary pages for you. Bump in the Night helps other independents besides yourself promote their own work and all that stuff. Very generous of you. And Garrett, citizens of Garrett Grove, we get to celebrate details about the book and all that sort of stuff. Again, all speaking to branding. How and where did you become so aware of the power of branding? Was that back in your band days or what?
I think yeah, we were definitely into it back then, but back in the band days, like I was a lot more into it than the rest of the band. So I was always the guy really doing a lot of the heavy lifting. In early 2000s, I came out with a solo album. Kind of country, very country, more in the vein of a Jimmy Buffett kind of stuff.
Wow, look at you.
Yeah, you guys can check it out on iTunes or it's all over, but it's
Is it under Damon Manx?
It is not, but you know the name that it is under.
Yes, I do.
And I had an album called Cocktails and Dreams.
Okay.
And I was very promoting the drinking by the seaside kind of thing and partying kind of thing. And I had quite the MySpace following at the time.
Okay.
And I was really branding then, and I was getting tons of downloads and getting tons of notoriety and played in Nashville and played in Dallas. And a lot of what I learned then, I'm using now. And it's more so just shoving myself down people's throats. It's just like being so in your face. And I hear authors say, "Oh, I feel bad about promoting myself all the time." I'm like, then stop writing, because you know what? Nobody else is going to promote you. Get it out there, get in people's faces, and also give them something else. You know what? Who's the greatest progressive rock band of all time? I'm Damon Manx. Let me know in the comments.
Right.
I'm not only promoting myself, but you know what? If I'm in your face every day asking you musical questions, you're thinking about Damon Manx. And that's a lot better than me just getting up and hawking my book every day. And because if you guys get up, hey, here's my book, and it's like I'm scrolling. It doesn't catch you. It's not a hook.
That's a key lesson. So many people overdo the just book. If you have a variety of different things, at least they're looking at something different. But if it's always the same cover, then that actually about 13 to 15 times it cements itself in a reader's brain or something like that. But after that, it can start having a negative effect. So you have to change things up. And I was really tickled with your musical thing, in that it's always a fun question. People respond to it, and there's never a mention of your writing in that. But you visually appear with the book the same way. So there's always that tie-in. It's almost an unspoken tie-in, which is a great branding technique.
I'm going to ask you, Chris, a quick question, because I'm also looking at the time. This would be a nice segue into The Promise, but I have a feeling you have some more things that you want to explore.
Yeah, that's probably one of the reasons why I kept saying this is a great place to start the second part of the conversation, because I thought we probably would have to break this into 2 episodes. So yeah, I think that might be what happens with this. And please edit that part out.
No, I'm going to leave it right there.
You have a TikTok presence, a Facebook presence, Instagram as well, YouTube.
Just started the YouTube, so I'm new to that, so we'll see.
Which are you most comfortable on?
TikTok, pretty much. Facebook, like I'm good at Facebook, but more so the reels on my reels on TikTok, Instagram. I can't talk. Really, I can write though. I can write.
The TikTok and reels on Instagram
and Facebook,
and then they become videos on Facebook or whatever.
Exactly.
Those seem to be your bread and butter.
Literally, yeah.
So you did the musical questions to keep people aware of you. Then you did a bunch of really fun things too that I want to point out is a reenactment of an early scene in the Oceanox that also feels a play or an homage to the Blair Witch Project. the way the camera work is done. And then just recently, you, very brave man that you are, did a very notorious scene from Silence of the Lambs that just changed an F word to the read word and placed a copy of the book very strategically. It was hilarious. It was a great homage to that scene, to that movie, but it was also, people couldn't help but be positively affected by the reminder that this is the book they should read. Where does that part of you come from? The auteur, the film funster.
In eighth grade, I was in a play. I got to play one of the lead roles in the play MASH. Really enjoyed it.
MASH in eighth grade.
MASH in eighth grade. Yeah, no, this was heavy stuff.
Suicide is painless.
They were playing that track as it was doing. So, like in the movie, the guy's name is Duke, played by Tom Skerritt, who is actually Hawkeye's best buddy. That was the role I played. And I've always had the actor blood in me. As an authors, we are entertainers. And that's what a lot of people forget. When you get up there and you're just like, hey there, this is my book, come and check it out. I'm like, if you're not exciting, why would I buy your book? And it's obviously your book is not exciting. I don't know, maybe not. I could be completely wrong, but I think
engaging, at least engaging, you have to be engaging,
right? You gotta present it in a, and also I'll do anything to get people to see my book. So if I've got to take off my clothes and put a book in front of my nethers and parade around in makeup and a bathrobe, I'm gonna do it to get the attention, to get you to at least say, okay, I'll check it out.
Yeah, if I hadn't begun to read the Oceananks and I saw that, I would have picked up that book just on the strength of the bravery and sheer on point of that little video. Well done. So we're hearing a pattern, ladies and gentlemen. What we're talking about is do everything you can to get your message across and somehow balance it so you're not a bludgeon. You're a source of entertainment. Would you agree, Damon Manx?
Yeah, because especially with TikTok now, that's a place people don't want to be sold. They want to be entertained.
Right.
Right. And I feel like social media is a place where some people want to argue politics, but I want to be entertained. I want to laugh. I want to laugh. I want to feel emotion. So I feel if you can offer something that entertains, it shows that you're an entertainer, and it transpires that there's a good chance that what you're writing is entertaining as well.
Yeah. I had a character, the Neighborhood Connect, that would recommend books. Yeah. In his world, books were contraband. So it was like, it was an homage to my neighborhood pot dealer.
Nice.
He'd be like, hey, listen, your mother was telling me, listen, I got this for you. And it would be a book, all that sort of stuff. And Teal liked him a lot, and they've been asking me to bring him back. So we might see more of that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
I love the one with the samurai sword.
Yeah.
Yes,
oh, that was
good one.
Recently. Yeah, it was an excuse to see if my wife would hold a sword to my neck, and she was very enthusiastic.
That definitely worked, though.
Yeah, I used to have my father's old holster from when he was a patrolman, and I had a toy gun in there that was realistic, right? And I was gonna just have that, like the National Lampoon, buy this issue or we'll kill this dog, right? But magically, it all of a sudden I can't find it. It's been hanging to my right for 20 years, but all of a sudden it's gone somewhere. That was your godson's sword. God bless him.
Interesting.
A little worried. Yeah. And she just wanted to make sure you could see her new nail job. So yeah, those kind of things I think are part watching you and having the fun with you, and part just trying to find ways. I'm an old sketch comedy guy and that kind of stuff from the South Soul comedy days, just trying to find, like you said, have some fun and send the stuff to them and all that sort of stuff. Your name of your company is Last Waltz Productions because you love the band, you love music. The musical questions show that, and that helps. Again, this is the second interview in a row where we've been talking to people about how you get yourself out there, and it's about being authentic. And those are authentic signs of you, the music, the hat, the fun, that kind of stuff. But you've also shared with us this experience that you've had, and this gets to what we've promised all along. All three of the four so far of the Ozark series have landed #1 in Amazon, The Promised Land. You get that little banner. How was that achieved?
Here it comes, folks.
Yeah.
This is the biggie.
Is this the carrot part of the show?
It's like a whole bushel of carrots.
So this is yeah, a lot goes into this. So naturally you get those #1 new release banners from sales.
Sure.
So you have to generate sales. Preferably you have to generate pre-orders. Pre-orders are huge. I have been planning this release for a very long time.
Talk about a year, 2 years?
Yeah, at least a year. I've known about the dates for about a year. I established the dates about a year ago, and as soon as I was able to put them up for pre-sale, I did. I want to say book 1 went up for pre-sale at least 4 to 5 months ago, or whatever is the whatever maximum is. I'm not even sure what that. It might be 3 months, but on Barnes and Noble it was a little bit longer that I put them up. And so this is where we were saving for the end.
Yep.
Okay,
this
so
is
check it
the
out.
whole deal.
So here it is. The thing that you really need to do is you need to build excitement about your story, because this is something you've been working on for so long. It's your passion. You owe it to yourself to give your baby the birth. I don't recommend giving birth 4 months in consecutively, but that's part of the thing. I wanted to release these books knowing they were cliffhangers really close together so that people didn't lose interest. So that interest kept building. So I said, let's go no longer than 4 weeks. Let's try to do between 3 and 4 weeks. And I started searching through my newsletter on Facebook, who would like to be a part of my ARC review tour. And I created a Google form. It's a Google sign-up sheet that asks very specific questions. That is, would you like to be a part of the tour? Would you like to be just part of the book 1 or the entire series tour? And specifically, what I expect. You need to tell readers or reviewers, because essentially these are going to be the people who review you and promote you your first week out there in the public eye. So you have to let them know what you expect, what's expected of them, what they get in return. And then if they cannot do that, tell them then this is not the art team for you.
Yeah.
And I was
so what
asked,
did you offer? So what did you offer for them if they read and then they're free to do whatever review they want? That's not, you can't demand, I want a great review, but just read and review whatever happens. And what did they get? Did they get a copy of the book? Did they get?
Everybody got the free downloaded ebook of all 4 books, provided they wanted to be on. Some people wanted to be on just for the first one. They get to, if they want to, they can be included in my newsletter, which is always giving out free stuff too as well. You know, essentially I said, hey, you're getting this first because you're going to be reading this series before the entire public gets to see it. And I'm sharing my life work with you.
And you sent this to your email list or your followers, or you did?
So what I did was I created a Google form, created a nice logo for it for each book, actually. And I sent it out, and it's a sign-up form. and I put it on.
Did you send it out through social media or through your newsletter?
Yeah. So there's a Facebook group called Books of Horror Freeview, where people can sign up to get free books for reviews in exchange for reviews. And I recruited a lot of people through there. I did it through my own Facebook page, my own Facebook profile. I have two. I have the author page profile. I did it on Instagram. I did it on TikTok. Everywhere. And I got close to 100 people who wanted to join the first book.
And if I can,
Yes.
Screams in the Dark got 73 reviews for an average of 4.5 stars. Ashes to Ashes, 30 reviews, 4.5 stars. All Fall Down, which came out September 3rd, already has 7 reviews, a full 5 stars. So this is a result of all of that effort?
So I'd say we got about 30 to 40 of the ARC team reviewed Scream in the Dark, because you're not everybody who signs up and says they're going to do it.
Right, sure.
Yeah. So we got about 30 or 40, which started the organic book rolling. I guess probably the next books are probably the ARC team that did it. I haven't really been scrutinizing them.
Sure.
As this whole thing's been coming out, it's hitting me like I'm rolling down a hill in the middle of an avalanche. But yeah, I owe a lot to the ARC team that started this ball rolling. And as the series goes, people will fall off or whatever. But the big one is to get the first one in the public eye. So that I recruited, and if you want to offer any kind of incentives, I was out thousands and thousands of dollars putting this book together. It costs a lot of money, so I couldn't send physical copies to my readers. I couldn't do that. Certainly, if you've got that kind of money, feel free to do that. But recruiting a great ARC team, ARC review tour. Not only did I want them to review it, but I wanted them to help me promote it on social media, get some of the excitement going. And I recruited some really dedicated readers along the way with that.
Good.
That's cool.
Yeah, and that's why I started the group Citizens of Garrett Grove, the Oceanox discussion group, so that I can share some of the insides and the hidden gems that they may not know actually really exist.
And I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, check out this book and eventually check out Garrett Grove, because one, you've never seen an author have this much fun. There's just so much that you're already playing with on the page. Here's where this happened. It's the actual place. Here's what this, and then look what we mentioned, the little videos we talked about. There's some maps, some other stuff that's coming out. Damon, it's been such a fun experience to see you just explode this out into the world.
Thank you.
My final question is,
I'm waiting for the board game.
My final question to you is, this has been a dream for a long time. How are you feeling? Do you feel like, this is what I wanted? Are you just starting to taste it? How do you feel? What's going on with you?
It's surreal. It's serendipitous. It's rewarding. It's all these things to find it. There's some organic growth now happening, and Lonesome Mountain has outsold all the other books as far as pre-sales goes. So that's really something. I applied for a featured deal with BookBub, and I landed it right out the door, and they promoted Scream
That's
in
very
the
tough
Dark.
to get.
Yeah, and it knocked Holly out of first place on Amazon, and
that's Stephen King's Holly, ladies and gents.
That was insane. Okay, so it's discounted. I keep got to say your book was discounted. You couldn't do that if you didn't discount your book, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Damn straight.
It's a win, and it's rewarding. Like I said, it feels like I've given birth every month for the last 3 months so far, and
Sure.
we
You got
one
another
of
one
these
down on the
and
way.
I'm about to have another one, and it's a whirlwind. But then it's also, kid, what are you gonna do next?
Yeah.
You know, I just want to counter a little bit of and I know you don't mean it in a negative way, but it was a negative statement that someone may have shared with you when you said, yeah, you couldn't have done it if you hadn't discounted it. You couldn't have done it if your mind had gone down a darker path back during COVID. You couldn't have done it if, because of the circumstance that you'd experienced for the years before that and during COVID, you had taken a different path. You couldn't have done it if you hadn't been willing to write 3 or 6 lines per screen view for 5 hours every night. And if you didn't continue to do that for 6 months, and if you didn't follow through after those 6 months to take a step back and get the rest of your life in gear, and take a breather, so then come back in 6 months and begin process on editing that story, revising that story, paring it down to a more, to you, acceptable page count, and then recognizing that now that I've done my personal edit, I need an outside set of eyes. You couldn't have if you didn't. Ultimately, whatever you've accomplished, you earned it. And if you hadn't done what you did, you wouldn't have. So there's no negative here. There's no loss here. There's no second-class citizenship here, because literally you walked every mile, sometimes barefoot, to get where you are. And that's what you've been talking about for the past hour or so with us, is just being dedicated to seeing it through.
And that you climbed out, you fell into the abyss and then climbed out of it, a decade of climbing out of the abyss, and then get hit with COVID. There's so many chances, so many opportunities to say, screw it. And you didn't take that. You kept going, and through COVID with 12 people in the room, with people dropping like flies, and you kept going, and then planning, and then reaching back into your band days and branding and putting all of that together is such a personal, I don't know that I've ever experienced or heard of or read of a more thrilling personal redemption story, self-made man. And that's one of the things I'm most impressed with about you.
Thank you. I'm honored by your kind words. It's been a long process, and I didn't even expect, I didn't know what to expect. I was hoping it would be well received. And now, for me, I think the real test of the strength of the story will be not this Halloween, but next Halloween, to see where it lies. I always felt that this was a classic telling of that. I always wanted to tell the perfect Halloween story. And that's why I brought the kids in, because the kids have this view of innocence, which is juxtaposed by the jaded view of even the sheriff, who's a Vietnam vet who's been through some tough stuff. And much something wicked this way comes, we have a child. Oh man, I wish I was older. Then I wouldn't have to listen to these rules. And you also have the older man who's, I wish I wasn't so old. I wish I was a younger man, and my body wouldn't behave like this. So I wanted that emotion in the book, and the juxtaposition, old to young, good versus evil, all coming together into one story. And I hope it resonates as much, and I hope people love this book as much as I love writing it.
It's a lot of fun. It's the best way to celebrate Halloween. All us Halloween people love Halloween, feel like it starts somewhere after 4th of July, and then slowly it's October 31st. And that's what happens with this. It's not just the 24 hours of Halloween, it's before that and all that. It's really fantastic, a lot of fun. It deserves to be a perennial read, and it has enough in there enough life. There's those books that we read over and over again. It's because it's that you can feel that life coming off the pages. And congratulations, man.
Chris
It's
and I,
really fantastic.
Chris and I have been talking. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Damon.
No, I would just thank you guys.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and thank you. Chris and I were talking about planning ahead in terms of the show, because we're 300 plus in here, and so now we're finally getting the knack of this. You know, but we've been talking about some fun things that we'd like to do this year as the year is rolling out there. And I'm thinking something that might be fun around Halloween. So if you're available, I would love to just pencil you in right now as part of that. That's something I'm thinking of, and have you back.
Count me in, definitely.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay. Chris, I'll tell you what it is later.
Good. I can't wait to find out. You know what I'm saying? When he tells Damon before he tells his partner, that's something.
Okay.
I'm excited
Damon,
already.
again,
Yeah.
Sir.
Thank you so much for everything you've done. Chris mentioned episode 298 of Tell the Damn Story. Please, folks, go back, check it out. Also, what was the other episode that you mentioned, Chris?
It
the other
was
show?
a show called Rise Above with Kevin Lanning. And that particular episode is called Addicted and Armed. He doesn't number his episodes like we do.
So 298 of us, Addicted and Arms with Kevin.
Rise Above with Kevin Lanning.
Rise Above with Kevin Lanning. And then our episode gives you a really great triumvirate view of Damon's Odyssey. And I think that's something that's inspirational for a lot of people, no matter whatever adversities you're facing. Understand that with a vision or a dream or a goal and a plan, you have a shot if you take action. And that's what this man did. Chris, as always, it's a joy, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you again real soon. Y'all come back now, you hear? Okay. Take care,
everybody.
everybody.
Go to Barnes & Noble or go to Amazon and check out the Ojanax series by Damon Manx. What's your time?
What should everybody else do?
Before you go to Lazan or Barnes & Noble, the last thing you can do for us before you leave today is to hit the subscribe so that we can keep coming in and saying, hey, how you doing? There you go.
And bringing you more good stuff like this. Take care, everybody.
Peace. Thanks,
Peace.
Dan.
Thank you.